everyone. Welcome. This is the fourth webinar in the Hydrocephalus Canada and Holland Bloorview Kids Rehab Hospital Youth Webinar Series, which is sponsored by Sick Kids Foundation. This webinar will focus on life skills, independence, and transitioning to adulthood for youth with hydrocephalus and spina bifida. Our presenters are Steph Di Martino and Melissa Thorne. Steph will share her insights as a life skills coach in the transitions, recreation, and life skills team at Holland Bloorview Kids Rehab. As a life skills coach, Steph helps to provide experience-based activities to support learning using discussion, role play, problem solving, and peer mentoring with an experiential, immersive approach. Steph is joined by Melissa Thorne, a member of the Holland Bloorview Alumni Network and a youth facilitator at the center. As a youth facilitator, Melissa helps youth and their families transition to adult life. As an adult with SBNH, Melissa will also share her lived experiences in relation to the topics tonight. Together, Steph and Melissa will explore strategies to navigate the adult world, how to grow up ready, and get involved in your own healthcare. They will also touch on daily living skills, time management, and organization at the end of the presentation. Okay, Steph, Melissa, are you ready to go? Great.
I think we're ready. Okay, so welcome to our Independence and Life Skills webinar. Some topics we're going to be discussing today in terms of your building independence and talking about life skills would be knowing your diagnosis, getting involved in your healthcare, knowing medications, allergies, any sensitivities that you might have, scheduling and time management. Talk a little bit about some things you can do at home, such as like cooking, getting involved with any kind of money skills and budgeting, talking about transit, how you get around and building that independence, and then talking about some chores around the home, and then a little bit about some social skills in terms of what you can do with your friends. So when we talk about knowing your diagnosis, knowing that there's a name for what you're experiencing or understanding how you're feeling based on what doctors and nurses and any kind of clinician has told you. Knowing that diagnosis can help support in treatment options and know what works best for you and your body. It can help reduce future health risks, and knowing your symptoms or reactions to look out for when you are out in the community or just through day-to-day life. And then finding more information about your diagnosis. So being able to explain it to maybe friends, family, teachers, employers, anyone that you might be interacting with on a daily basis. That's a really big thing, to be able to talk about your diagnosis and get others to understand maybe what you're going through or what you're feeling, or just to better understand if you're like either learning or anything like that. So I was just trying to think of an easier way or like a simple way to talk to people about a diagnosis. So I did the example of hydrocephalus. And so when you're talking to maybe your friends or family members or teachers or someone who has never been or who has never heard of the diagnosis, finding an easy way to kind of explain it to people. So I kind of wrote out something pretty simple on the screen. So I said hydrocephalus is a buildup of fluid deep within the brain. The extra fluid is putting pressure on the brain tissue and can make the brain not function properly. So some of those things could be maybe you get a headache, or there's vision problems, or nausea, or vomiting, problems with balance and coordination, sleepiness, maybe there's a change in personality, or loss of memory. So it can kind of alter, and knowing like what someone is typically, and then knowing things to maybe look out for. So if you were trying to describe this diagnosis to someone like your friends and saying like, if you ever notice maybe that I'm not remembering things, or if it stands out, for them to be able to be comfortable to maybe say something to you. Melissa, is there anything else that you're thinking that might be helpful? Or
yeah, sure. So I had a recent shunt revision last year, and I didn't have any of the normal symptoms that all the doctors talk about. I had more of the obscure ones. So knowing all of the symptoms as a whole is really important, because all I had was back pain and really bad head pressure. I didn't have any headaches. I didn't have vision problems or nausea or vomiting or any balance issues. So being able to understand maybe not some of the most common symptoms is really, really important. And just to, even if you feel different or you have questions about maybe having some symptoms related to your shunt, just know that it's really important, even if you just have questions, to talk to your doctor. Because I waited a little bit too long with my last surgery. So it's really important, if you feel different, just to even ask your doctor questions, and maybe they can help prevent something bad happening in the future.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That kind of leads into this next slide. So knowing your body, right? Knowing when something doesn't feel right, knowing when something does, when you're feeling good, knowing who to talk to about it. So Melissa said that it wasn't typical symptoms that she was feeling, but something wasn't right, and she felt the need to talk to someone about it, right? So, and if it's ever happened to you before, maybe even looking out for similar signs, right? When you're tired, stressed, mad, knowing all those feelings that you have and how they affect your body is also a really good thing to be aware of. And then giving your body what it needs, right? So if you know you're getting really tired, if you're having busy days, like knowing what your body needs to recover, so it doesn't impact you kind of later on throughout the week or through the month and things like that. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about getting involved in your healthcare. So we've kind of gone through knowing your diagnosis, knowing how to express yourself in terms of like what's going on, what's typical for you, what's something that might be a little bit different, and knowing how to share that with doctors, parents, friends, in order to get the support you need. So when we talk about managing your health, what does that mean, right? Well, it means like the older you get, the more important it is to start learning how to become more involved and independent when it comes to your personal health, right? Because maybe you're going to move out, or maybe you're going to be not living with parents, or maybe you're going to res, or you know what I mean? There's so many different options that are out there. And so you need to be in charge of your body and in your healthcare. So getting involved in conversations. So whether it's in appointments, whether it's speaking up if you're meeting with anyone, asking questions if you don't understand something, or if you're questioning something that someone's telling you. Maybe it's booking appointments. I know sometimes parents tend to take a lead on that, right? And even if you can kind of shadow and listen to how they book the appointments, or who are your doctors, knowing the phone numbers of the important doctors, so like dentists or any specialists or family doctors, those kinds of things. Same with medications and allergies. So examples, knowing what medications you're taking. I know I work with a lot of clients who may know their morning meds really, really well, right? They set a timer, or they just know when they wake up to take their medications, and knowing what color they are, how many there are, those kinds of things. It does get a little tricky if you have a lot of medications and you're taking multiple things throughout the day. But it's not that you have to know everything right away. Even knowing your morning ones, that's a great step. Move to your evening ones as well. Knowing how many there are, if there's 6, what color are they? I know sometimes names are a little bit difficult, so don't always stress about the names. You can write it in your phone. You can take a photo of it. There's options, right? You don't always have to memorize things. And I think people think, I have to memorize everything in order to be independent or to know my stuff. That's not true. If you can look for it somewhere on your phone, if you have a book, those kinds of things, utilize that. I talked about medications, knowing your dentist, doctor, any healthcare professionals. So knowing their names is very helpful, because then you can always Google them. Or if you can input in your phone their names with their numbers. You can also put addresses, those kinds of things. Knowing how to make an appointment. So knowing kind of what to say on the phone or in an email, and we'll go through that a little bit later. Remembering when your appointments are, so finding what works best for you. Is it your phone? Is it a calendar that you write on? Finding something in order to help you remember. Knowing what your allergies are, if there are any of them or any sensitivities, that can always be helpful. Knowing any other important health information about yourself, allergies, sensitivities, and refill prescriptions. I know sometimes you're not the ones doing it because it could be automatic, or someone does it for you because it's an automated service. There's a bunch of options, but even shadowing how to do those things and hearing what it is, because especially with, I feel like COVID, now we're utilizing technology a little bit more and not necessarily talking to pharmacists, but knowing like your RX number and how to input that, those kinds of things. So I have it's a little bit of a cheesy video, but it does have a great message behind it. And it's all about getting involved in your healthcare. And this could be very relatable to you in terms of when you're in an appointment, knowing how much to say, if you say nothing, if you don't understand something. So I'm going to play this video and we'll have a little chat after about what your thoughts were on it. So this is a video from a hospital in the US. I wish it was Canadian, but it's not. But the concept behind it is fantastic. And I hope you guys enjoy it.
Advisory committee.
Your parents have been taking care of your whole entire life. Now it's time for you to take charge in your health. If you're able to have a social life and make daily decisions, then you can play an active role in your health.
The key is talking openly, both with your parents and with your doctors. Let's take a look at how it's done.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
So lately, she's actually been complaining a little bit about some pain, but
Hey, you can speak too. Be involved in the conversation with your parents and with your doctor.
It still hurts a little bit when I bend it, but it's been better.
Great, then you're ready to start physical therapy.
do you think it's going to take a long time for her to get better?
No, as long as she rests it and doesn't re-injure it.
Okay, great.
Do you guys have any other questions about the physical therapy?
Hey, you had a million questions on the ride here. Now you don't have any? This is your chance. Get your questions answered.
So what about softball tryouts? They're in a month, and I was wondering if I'd be able to do that.
It depends on the improvement in the range of motion, which I'm hoping will be ameliorated by the prescribed therapy. It will be important to avoid unnecessary exertional stress, and supporting the joint would be recommended.
Oh, please, none of us knew what she was talking about. Make sure you understand what she means. Sorry, I don't really know what you mean.
Basically, if you do the physical therapy, rest it, and wear a brace or wrap, you should be fine for tryouts.
Great, thanks.
All right, I'm gonna go get your prescription for physical therapy. Any other questions? Anything else I can do?
No.
Really? Isn't there something else you want to say? Let your doctor know what's important to you.
Oh, I forgot. Is this gonna affect the way I throw?
Probably not. We'll have to see how it heals. It's gonna be really important that you keep in touch with me and let me know how it's going.
Thanks.
Thanks. So your father and I are going to have to try to figure out between our schedule, our work schedules, and your picking up your sister, the best way to get you to physical therapy. And you may have to miss some school as far as getting to PT.
You know, you could take a little responsibility. Taking control of your own health starts with your own actions.
Well, actually, a girl on my team, when she got injured, she went to this place after school and then after went to practice. So maybe I can do that.
That's a really great idea. I'm really proud of you for thinking of that, and it really shows that you're maturing and taking some responsibility for your health.
You deserve a say in managing your own health. It might take some time and practice, but the first step is talking with your parents and with your doctor. So remember, 1, have a conversation with your parents and with your doctor.
2, ask questions and make sure you understand everything your doctor says.
3, let your doctor know what's important to you and what you need.
So, what did we think of that video? Does anyone have any thoughts? Feel free to write it in the chat if it's something that you're interested in just sharing what you thought of it. I think a huge thing as a takeaway from that video is to normalize asking questions and to normalize saying, I don't know what that means, or questioning something. Like, it's okay if you don't understand. I think it's important for us to speak up, especially when we're being a patient and the doctor has all this knowledge, and we just need to be able to speak up for ourselves and voice what our wants and needs are and what's important to us, right? So even if it's just saying one thing in an appointment that normally you would say nothing, that's a win. Keep that in mind, right? One thing. Next time, maybe it's 2 things. Maybe it's sharing a story or something that you experienced, and maybe the doctor can let you know what you can do to make it a better experience the next time. Like, I just think sometimes we get so nervous and scared when it comes to talking to healthcare professionals. But a lot of times when I'm working with clients, sometimes I create a template or a sheet and just brainstorm anything that the doctor might talk about. So they'll probably ask for an update. So write down some things that you've experienced in the last 6 months, if that's what it's been. Write down something maybe that you're hoping for out of the appointment. Write things down, because I know our nerves sometimes get the best of us. And if we have it written down, if we're getting too shy to actually verbalize it, we can always pass the paper to the person too, and they can read it. But at least they have an idea.
That's what I was going to say, Steph. I always, take a little cheat sheet with me, if you will, and make sure that I get all my answers or my questions answered.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, having a couple questions written down too, right? So not only sharing what you've been feeling or what's been going on the last little bit, but maybe if you have a couple questions, write them down so you don't forget them.
Yeah. So what I usually do, or what I tell my clients to do, is have like a sit down with your parent. If your parents aren't going to come with you, have a sit down with your parents beforehand and brainstorm any questions, any symptoms you're having, any next steps if you're in the middle of a treatment, anything you have questions about. Make sure you have your meds written down. I have everything written down: my diagnosis, my surgery dates, my meds, my allergies. It's all in my phone in my health app. And that's really helpful because my memory is not very good. So I have everything in my phone. If my mom or my dad's not with me in the appointment and I get flustered or the doctor has questions that I can't answer, I always have mom on hand on speed dial, so she can be in the appointment on speakerphone and things like that. So in really important appointments like pre-op surgery appointments or anything like that, and if mom can't come with me, I usually have her on the phone just as backup. If you have any questions for you talking about, I always think about doing like a role play with my mom, or brainstorming maybe what the doctor might say, just so it makes those conversations a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's a great strategy too. Having, if you are going by yourself, having your parent or someone that in your family on speakerphone, right? And they don't have to say anything. They can just be there and kind of be an ear. And if you do need them to step in at any time, you can let them know, like, hey, do you have any questions or things like that? And now when talking about maybe making appointments or leaving voicemails or calling someone, emailing someone, any of those kind of techie things, it's always good. I feel like I've noticed more people are texting or using email in order to make appointments instead of a phone call. But keep in mind, all of them must have the same things in them. Your first name, your last name, the purpose of why you're calling, maybe what's been going on and why you need the visit of some sort, and your contact information, and maybe providing some dates. So whether that's a phone, an email, a text, it needs to incorporate all those things, because you don't want to be going back and forth with someone and them saying, sorry, what was your name? Sorry, what are you calling for? Sorry, how do you want me to get in contact with you? So if you can just kind of incorporate it, you can make a template of even just writing this stuff down and then knowing what to say. So when you're in the moment, it's in front of you. So I created a little, just a quick, like if you were doing, say, a doctor one. I know for me specifically, my dentist, for whatever reason, has done texting and emails. No one really talks to me on the phone now. So you write your email, obviously, to whoever it is. Make sure in your subject line, you're putting what you're looking for. Make sure you're including your full name. So hello, my name is George Smith. I have a scheduled appointment for Monday, July 23rd at 9:45 a.m. with what doctor? And I would just like to confirm this appointment, because maybe you haven't heard back from them and you've had this, it's maybe a specialist, for example, that it's been 6 months in the making and you've heard nothing and you're getting a little bit nervous. So following up, and then also at the bottom, having a contact. So not only will they have your email, but they'll have your cell phone, because maybe on file, it might just be your house phone and maybe you don't live at home anymore or whatever the case is, right? So best way to get a hold of you. And when talking about time management, so Melissa brought up a good point previously about how she keeps everything in her health app on her phone, because she's not always super confident about her memory, although knowing Melissa, her memory is fantastic. So you just got to find what works for you. And when I'm working with clients, it's a lot of trial and error. Some people love tech stuff. So they love the phone. They love the day planner. They love the sounds that the phone makes. They love the reminders. That's what works for them. Some people prefer a paper copy. So a calendar maybe that you keep in your kitchen where your whole family writes on it, or maybe you have your own personal one in addition to that one that's in the kitchen. Maybe you have to-do lists. Maybe you have all of the above, if that's what works for you. Some people have a smartphone or a smartwatch where it goes right to their wrist. So knowing what tasks you have and how and what works for you to keep on top of all of them. So, and knowing yourself enough about what makes you procrastinate, or what makes you forget these things, or what makes you not want to get these things done, right? So yeah, like I said, a lot of trial and error. So I was just thinking of a quick activity. There's a lot of things that people need to get done in a day, and it can be overwhelming, but prioritizing what's important is huge. So you might have a list of 20,000 things that you need to do in a day, but realistically, do they all need to be done in that day? Probably not. There might be 5 that are absolutely need to get done. So Melissa and Shauna, I was hoping you guys could help me with this. What are 3 things you guys need to do every day?
Take my meds.
Take your meds.
Do my other medical routine, my catheters, all of my other stuff.
Same here.
Absolutely. And let's think of one other one that you might need to do.
Get dressed for the day, like pick out clothes. I usually do that the night before, so that I'm not scrambling to figure out what I'm going to wear the next day. Maybe, something I started doing as well for work is making my lunch the night before as well. So the same thing. I'm not running around crazy. I have a Wheel-Trans pickup at 8:10 and it's 8:05 and I haven't made my lunch yet, kind of thing. So those are the kind of activities that I I do on a regular basis every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And how do you remember doing those? What's like what do you like to use? A calendar, a phone? How do you remember?
For myself, I take my meds in the morning and just before I go to bed. So in the morning, I take them after I brush my teeth.
Okay. Routine.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Melissa?
For my meds, if I don't see them, I forget about them. So they're on my nightstand right beside my bed. So I remember to take them. And for every other task I have to do during the day, it's all written down in my handy dandy planner, or else I will forget.
All right. Pen to paper kind of person.
Yes.
Okay. Pen to paper. I see that. Okay.
Yes.
And then is there anything that you guys know? So kind of reflecting on yourselves of what kind of distracts you from getting those things done? Is there anything you can think of that?
No, I don't think necessarily those activities, but like school projects or work projects, I really have to sit down and like schedule out times to work on those certain projects and have breaks in between, or else I just get overwhelmed or I lose motivation to keep going and getting them done. And I feel like because I don't always do things, I really have to keep myself accountable to those tasks. And I feel like writing them down makes it more concrete and helps me to stay on track.
Totally.
I know for me, with meds, if I have to take more than the ones that I'm used to taking every day, you know, those long pill things that have like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Say I'm on a new antibiotic. I will use one of those day tracker things and put all my pills in. So I know that, okay, oh, I haven't taken that one yet. So I better do that before the end of the day.
Yeah. And I'm sure learning those strategies, like Melissa's saying, feeling disorganized essentially and scattered. If she has a lot going on, she's going to forget things. And with you, a new routine coming in, that probably took a lot of trial and error for you guys to figure out what works. Right. So I think we need to let people know that it's okay to make mistakes, and it's good to make mistakes because you learn from them. So not to stress out if things aren't working. Try another way, keep trying, and eventually you'll figure out what kind of works for you. But talking it out with someone is also helpful, whether it's a friend, a family member, and like it could be a supervisor of some sort, a teacher, anything. And in talking about tasks, there's so many different things that people do. So just kind of keeping on it, whether it's appointments, school schedule, homework, any extracurriculars that you're doing, if you're involved in any kind of basketball, gym memberships, social clubs, chess club, those kinds of things, events with family and friends, those can fill up fast if you have, especially with the holidays coming up, household chores, staying on top of the laundry, the cleaning, medications, making sure everything's refilled. So there's lots to consider. We've kind of talked about some of the stuff, and I just want to be cognizant of the time. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about life skills and to start introducing some daily tasks if you haven't yet already. So talking about cooking, talking about money in general, whether it's making a purchase, budgeting, all of that stuff. Transit looks different for everyone. Are you taking a bus, a subway? Does your family drive you? Does a friend drive you? Are you carpooling? Do you drive yourself? Do you take Uber? Those kinds of things. And then chores around the home. Okay. So when we're talking about cooking, this is a huge goal that I've noticed a lot of the clients that I work with want to learn. It's something that they maybe didn't have time to do and are now, or maybe they weren't comfortable doing when they were younger and are now feeling more confident and want to kind of explore that skill. So talking and finding what works for you. So whether maybe you need some adapted devices, or maybe you want to work on a specific meal or you want to be more involved at home. So I think there's no age of when you should technically start. I think lots of people tend to start, I would say, after high school, because maybe in high school, you're more working on preheating the oven, using a microwave, those doing the frozen pizzas, the chicken fingers, the French fries, all that stuff. And then when you're getting outside of high school, that's when your palate might change and you want to try some different foods, right? So I think getting started with learning the microwave, got to be a pro at the microwave, maybe the toaster oven, if people are into that. Those ones are a little less scary, little less risk, you could say. And then moving towards the stovetop and the oven. So starting off even with a snack. So a snack can be anything. It doesn't have to be something where you're using necessarily the microwave or an oven or a stove. It might be actually just assembling. So getting stuff from your fridge. Maybe it's a sandwich, maybe it's pita and hummus, but knowing that you can get it, that you can reach this stuff, that it's accessible to you, knowing how to put it away, how to store it. Then kind of moving up to maybe it's chopping apples and doing apples and peanut butter as a snack. Then moving up to something in the oven or on the stove, like a grilled cheese. So it really is pretty individualized in terms of what you're comfortable with, but starting with the smaller stuff and working your way up makes it a little less daunting and scary and a little bit more achievable, right? So I know for me personally, I was a huge fan of frozen pizzas growing up. And now when I'm not the best cook myself, but in evolution, I've been growing my repertoire of cooking. And now my go-to is, I think everyone should have one or two things that they're really good at making. So my two things is a tortilla pizza and vegan mac and cheese. So Melissa and Shauna, would you guys say you guys have some go-to meals that maybe have changed? So something that you may have done when you were younger to what you do now?
So for me, I used to eat a lot of mac and cheese.
Okay, yeah.
Now my go-to is I make homemade pasta. So like I make the sauce and boil the noodles. That's one of my go-to meals.
Nice. Okay, and it's kind of like evolved because of mac and cheese. You're still boiling the noodles, but it's like a pre-made package, right?
Right.
And then your palate may have changed and you're like, hey, I want to try something a little different.
Yeah. I'm frying the meat, adding onions, mushrooms, whatever I want in it. And then the sauce as well.
Yeah. So you worked your way up to it.
Which noodles am I going to choose? Are they going to be penne or just spaghetti noodles?
Yeah. And what about you, Melissa? When did you start cooking, would you say? And then what's your go-to stuff now?
I started cooking when I love to cook and bake. So I started cooking pretty young with my dad in the kitchen. Some of the first things he taught me to make was Chinese fried rice, and a lot of Indian food. So I started off like pretty simple, like Shauna with like Katie or grilled cheese. But now one of my favorite dishes to make is pad thai.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Woohoo. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you're definitely a cooker. That's for sure. But that's good. You started young and you had, you probably asked your dad to kind of show you the ropes, right?
Yeah.
By just watching them and then slowly probably being like, hey, can I stir this for you?
Yeah.
Can I measure that for you, and kind of working your way up, right?
Yeah. He taught me so well that over Thanksgiving, I made a whole Thanksgiving dinner for 10 people all by myself. So working together really. Yeah, thanks. Really good. Yeah.
I like to bake as well. And I learned at an early age with my grandma. She loved to bake as well. So she would let me help, put the ingredients together. Not so much around the oven when I was younger, just because I'm not super steady on my feet. So, you know, you learn to accommodate for that. So, you know, you might have to hold on to something while you're putting something into the oven so that, you know, you don't spill it, or it doesn't spill on you when you're taking it out and it's hot. You don't want to get burnt, things like that. There's, you know, ways to get around things.
Yeah. And that's a great point, that sometimes places aren't accessible, right? Kitchens aren't accessible, but you can always make something accessible, or put your own kind of spin on it. So a lot of clients that when I used to go into their homes, their kitchens weren't accessible, but it was really hard for them to reach the nozzles on some of the ovens and stoves, right? So you can get like an electric hot plate and put a pot on it and put it at a table where it's easier for you to press the buttons or touch the nozzles, right? Because they're not all the way at the back, for example. As you can see on the PowerPoint, there's a knife that has like a pivot, so it's attached to the board, so you don't always have to worry about your hand slipping. So things like that. There's definitely ways, but there's trial and error at the same time, but also knowing what's available to you. So doing some research is also helpful, or talking to doctors or occupational therapists, physiotherapists, those kinds of things. Okay, money skills. So this is a big one for, I guess the older you get, the more money you might get, because you could be working, or you could get ODSP, or there's so many, there's some grants or things like that, right? Even thinking about if you're going away to school and OSAP and those kinds of things. So starting off with getting a bank account, I think, is a big one. Asking your parents, or going with your parents, or going to the bank on your own, and just getting a bank card. Money is kind of actual cash. A lot of people aren't using since COVID too, so having a card is quite helpful. And now there's so many apps that are associated with those bank cards, so you can manage your money by just signing in and looking to see what's happening, making a purchase. So going up, sometimes it can be nerve-wracking going up to a counter. So say you're at Starbucks or McDonald's or Tim Hortons, and actually going up and voicing what you want, especially with a mask. Sometimes people can't hear us, and if they're not getting our order right, it could get frustrating. So practice makes perfect kind of thing. You got to get out there. You got to get ordering stuff. You got to get talking to people. I know a lot of us kind of had a break, I'd say about of a year, of people not going to those places because we were stuck inside, right? So getting back out there is super important. And if working with cash is something that you want to work on, to get used to coin combinations, so getting used to the dimes, the nickels, the toonies, the loonies, all those bills, and taking your time. I know sometimes it can get frustrating or nerve-wracking if there's lineups and you feel rushed. That's never a good feeling. But some good alternatives is if you have a bank card and you can do a tap, or if you want to put in your code, things like that to kind of alleviate some stress. Budgeting is a big one. So knowing what your expenses are. So a lot of clients I work with will know some of their stuff, right? But there's a lot of expenses in day-to-day life that we don't even consider or remember, just because, you know, food happens and we don't realize that we're spending $11.50 every other day, and that adds up, right? So keeping in mind what you're spending your money on, how much you're spending. I don't know if you would get an allowance, and knowing if that could actually last you a week or a month or whatever it is, and seeing where it goes, because sometimes money goes real quick. And a big one that I think everyone has a cell phone now, I'd say. I would say it's very odd for someone not to have a phone, whether it's like your parents' phone, you share a phone, those kinds of things. Knowing how much your bill is, how much you utilize, right? So when you start paying your own bills, you're taking into consideration, okay, I have a Netflix account. and that costs me $8.99, and I have my phone bill, like the non-negotiables maybe for you, right? Melissa and Shauna, when you guys first started, when did you guys start getting involved in like your finances?
I would say when I got my first job. So I got my first job when I was 14. So I had a paycheck coming in, and back when I was 14, there weren't bank cards. You had to physically go to the bank and go up to the teller and take your check, and they would either deposit it into your account, or if you wanted some money, you could ask for a certain amount of cash from it, because you couldn't go to the ATM and get money like you can now. You actually had to go to the teller and, write out a deposit slip and ask for it. So I started very young. So, when I had my first job.
Okay, so 14. And Melissa, what about you?
I think mine was grade 7, so 12 or 13. I started babysitting, and that's the year that Mom took me to get my bank account and my bank card. And we sat down pretty early. My mom's a teacher, so she likes to start on these things really young. So we sat down and she worked on budgeting with me and helping me understand, like, if I'm buying a certain thing that's $20, how much cash am I supposed to give back? So I understand the math part of it, because math is a struggle for me. So understanding that stuff we worked on as well. And as I got older and had to start using ODSP and getting money from my job now, I've actually made like a budget sheet on Excel to make sure I'm spending them not too much money or paying my bills. And I have an app on my phone that pings when my bills are due and stuff. So there's different ways that I've worked around money skills and learning to do all of these things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So everyone's different, right? I think a good way to start is maybe if you have a budget, say for lunch money, trying to stick within that for a week and then doing it into a month and seeing if you can stick to that. I think the Excel spreadsheet's a great idea. Same with any app for banks. Like, for example, I'm with TD and I can put limits on how much I spend. So it could be maybe only $40 a day or $100 a week, that kind of stuff, right? So if it's hard if you don't always want to keep track of it in your mind, putting those limits on for yourself, so it's less thinking. But then you might get a surprise of saying, oh, you can't use your card right now because you got no more money. Yeah, so those are things to consider. Okay, transit. This is a huge one. No matter where you live, you got to get around, right? And you got to figure out what works for you. So whether you're using public transit, Wheel-Trans, anything in any kind of wherever you live, public transit, right? Or if you're using Uber, Lyft, taxi, if that's your mode of transportation, or maybe you're driving or a family member's driving. These are all things that you'll need to talk to people, like you'll need to talk it through, right? So if someone's driving, you need to make sure that it's okay with their schedule, not just yours. I think sometimes we think that people should be at our beck and call, and that's not always the case. Everyone has their own life. We have to kind of work together in order to make things manageable for both parties. When you're talking about Uber, Lyft, or taxi, it's a convenient way, more expensive nonetheless, but also knowing how to activate those apps, right? You have to get a Visa card. You'll have to know where you're going, so the addresses. So if you are going to, say, a specialist appointment, you have to know that it might not be pinned to where your current location is, and you have to put in the location you are currently and where you want to go. So figuring out the step-by-step on how to use those apps properly, right? And same with meeting points and things like that. Public transit, it's always quite intense because, as you can see, I have the Toronto one on this PowerPoint, and there are a lot of different lines in which you can take. And so these are majority of the subway lines. But if elevators are out, if the track isn't running, those kind of unexpected changes, right? So not only do you have to know how to get from point A to point B, but also the what ifs. What if there's something wrong with the track? What if the bus isn't running? All of that stuff. So that comes with practice as well. I find when you're doing public transit, having someone with you is really helpful, because it can be quite scary by yourself. And knowing how to navigate safe people to approach if you are lost, if you need support, who are safe people to go up to. So knowing the uniforms, knowing what logos to look out for, knowing, like in Toronto, it's called the designated waiting area, DWA. There'll be like an intercom and it'll say emergency and just to ask a question and help. So knowing those, kind of exploring public transit and really absorbing everything there is. If there's an information booth, knowing, like I said, the logos, knowing the different areas and what they need, reading the signs is huge. So you really have to be aware of your environment and where you're looking. You can't just have your head down and hope for the best. Yeah. Okay. Now talking about a little bit, taking on some responsibilities at home. This looks different for everyone. Everyone has different roles and responsibilities in their home, depending who you're living with, right? I know Melissa has a roommate. I live by myself. Our responsibilities are going to look very different, right? So kind of taking maybe what you enjoy and starting off with that. So dishes, laundry, so washing, drying, folding. People tend to hate the folding part. I personally love it. Cleaning your room, a common area, the kitchen, the bathroom, taking turns, grocery shopping, meal prep. These are kind of day-to-day tasks that you need to start getting exposed to if you're not currently exposed to, right? And it doesn't have to be all of these things all the time. Maybe taking turns. So if you're living with a parent, maybe you're doing the folding for the laundry, or maybe you're doing one load. Maybe you're just doing your own clothes. Who knows? Same with cleaning. It could be cleaning your room, making your bed. Maybe it's a common area. Maybe your agreement is you're just doing the bathroom, or you're just doing your room. Those kinds of things. Not overwhelming yourself. I find people, they realize that, oh, there's a lot of stuff I should be doing. I got to do it all. Let's not do it all. Let's pick and choose and feel good and not overwhelmed by it, and then work our way up. Even dishes, it could be actually physically washing them. It could be just stacking the dishwasher. That's one chore you can get involved in the home, pay your dues, and kind of move on, right? And this is something that I really wanted Melissa to I wanted to have a chat about this because we didn't get a chance in our last webinar, talking about some social stuff. So we talked a lot about getting involved in a lot of your healthcare and day-to-day tasks with money, chores, cooking, all of that stuff. A big thing in terms of getting involved in your healthcare or getting involved in your social life too would be, when's the right time to have a sleepover? When are you going to feel comfortable? Because this is a huge milestone in development for every human being. We eventually are going to have to be away from home at some point, right? Whether it's a hospital visit, whether it's visiting a family member, whether it's visiting a friend, maybe you're going away to school, right? And to know what is needed in order to feel confident in staying overnight. And Melissa and I had many conversations about our very first sleepover. And I want you guys to all think in your head of your very first sleepover and if it went to plan. Because when me and Melissa think back on our first one, I didn't make it through the full night. I went for a sleepover and I'm pretty sure at midnight, I called my family and said, yeah, I gave it a try. Didn't like it. Like to come home now. And the thought was, no, you should be away from home. You should try it out. And I was like, well, let's think about it. I left home for 4 hours. I think that's a great start. And then you kind of build on it, right? Maybe next time it's 5 hours. And then maybe you wake up at 3 a.m. and you call home because you just can't do it anymore. Still a buildup, right? So taking into consideration what you need to bring or what you need to do in order to feel comfortable, confident, and excited for this endeavor. So Melissa, I know for you, you would have different considerations than maybe what I would have or what Shauna would have, right? So what were some things you had to consider when you were starting out having a sleepover or being away from home?
Some of the things that I had to really think about was if my friends didn't know that I used catheters, or didn't know that I at that time wore pull-ups overnight just because of maybe leaking, or needing assistance if I was having a shower, or being able to get dressed by myself when I was younger. So those things I really had to consider and kind of have that discussion with myself to say, am I at the point that I feel comfortable talking to my friends about this and letting them help me, or do I think I should just talk to their mom maybe and see if she was comfortable helping me with these things, or having my mom help me to problem solve if I get stuck in the middle of the night, to be able to work through some of those issues. So I really had to think about those questions and kind of consider what I was comfortable with and what my friends maybe were comfortable with. I had some really great friends, so their moms were really awesome helping me when I was younger. But as I grow older, I've got some really awesome friends that wouldn't second guess or second think of helping me when I need help. So having those really good conversations when you're feeling ready about sleepovers and what your needs are is really important to kind of have that relationship and be comfortable so you can have those experiences, because sleepovers are awesome way to become social and have those connections with your friends. So understanding what your needs might be when you're sleeping out, and kind of going through maybe scenarios that might happen and how you might be able to fix them is really important.
Yeah. So almost like a checklist of everything that you would need, right? And then some for the just in cases.
Yes.
Yeah. And to know that it's okay if it doesn't go as planned, because you'll learn for next time, right? And you do want to be excited. It should be something where you're not terrified of, right? You want them to be some emotion of excitement and looking forward to it, with the side of, yeah, I'm nervous. I've never done this before. I don't know what to expect. It's the unknown, right? Yeah. And you can always build on it. No, I don't think there's a seldom few who've had their first sleepover and it's gone perfect, right? But I think you can build on it, and staying out later than what you normally would with your friends in the attempt of having a sleepover, I think is a win. And then the next time it could be 10 minutes more, an hour more, and eventually you can work up to that. And like Melissa said, it's a huge bonding experience doing this with friends. You get to see different sides of them, right? Everyone has their own bedtime routine. Everyone has their own things, like whether it's a special pillow or a blanket or how long they take in the washroom or those kinds of things, right? So keeping in mind that it's a really important milestone. I think everyone should be experiencing it, whether it is with friends or through programs. I know at Holland Bloorview, we offer some programs where you start off with a weekend away, and then it can build up to a week, and then 3 weeks, and then kind of that. So whether it's a camp, whether it's a program, whether it's friends, kind of putting yourself out there and working on that. Yeah. All right. So that concludes us for the independence and life skills. I just hope that You guys know that it takes willingness to learn. There's patience and there's lots of troubleshooting. Everyone learns differently and at their own pace. So never stop trying to get outside your comfort zone, because that's when the growth really happens. And we hope this webinar helps you reflect on your independence and life skills and hopefully gets you moving forward.
For many people with hydrocephalus and spina bifida, they might have difficulties with these skills. They're brain-based habits of thought. So mental processes that we use to go about our day, from controlling impulses like eating that extra cookie, remembering to do homework, to organizing your daily activities, those are all based on executive skills. And these skills should develop and improve as a person learns and ages. But for some, these skills can be challenging to develop. Do you have any tips that you would suggest, Melissa? If you have issues with executive skill functioning?
Yeah, I struggle with my working memory, my task initiation, getting started in tasks, and like staying organized. So the way I kind of work around those issues, I use my planner a lot. I make sure that I take breaks in between the tasks. I make sure I reward myself when I'm done the task, may it be watch a movie or have a snack, something like that, just to keep me motivated. Because I feel like that's one of my weaker skills, is staying motivated in the tasks and getting started. Working memory, I have to write down a lot of things. So if I'm in a meeting or if I'm at school, in a class or something, I have to write every single word down and reread those notes so I remember it. I try to help myself by talking it through with my mom, maybe, or having her help me plan things. I use apps to stay organized as well. So just being cognizant of how your executive functioning works and what best suits you to get through those challenges is really, really important. And I feel like once you find things that work and you can stick with them, it really, really helps.
Perfect. And, you know, you can ask your parents, ask your siblings, teachers, friends, even coworkers to help you recognize and identify the areas as well where you might need a little help. You know, I have a friend who has a lot of trouble with organization. He's actually a coworker. So what I often do when I have a lot of tasks for him is I'll do a to-do list. And that's very helpful for him because he can mark things off as he completes them.
Just want to say thank you to our hosts this evening, to Steph and Melissa, and as well, Shauna. You were amazing as always. It's become so enjoyable to spend Wednesday evenings with you. Such relatable, interesting, and informative content. So thank you for that.